Right, I'm now going to hand over to David Brown, who's going to finish up our presentations, and hopefully that will work. Thank you, David.
Hopefully. I wasn't really sure, even last night, what I was going to say and what I was going to talk about when I was here. I've got some great speakers ahead of me. They've covered most of the details about cookies and what they are in the legislation. It's also a big ask because I'm the only person from a web analytics company that's here, so I feel like I'm speaking on behalf of the entire industry, which is quite a big thing. Obviously, we're here to talk about cookies today. I think one of the things is that from our perspective in the web analytics industry, there's a couple of things. A lot of the sort of privacy proponents use some very emotive language when they talk about cookies. One word that I have particular trouble with is tracking. When you look at web analytics specifically, we're only measuring traffic to a website. We're not actually tracking people across one site to another. That's more of a marketing function with things like ad serving companies and things like that. And I think that was the intent of the legislation in the beginning is, when you go onto a particular website, let's say you go onto Google and you search for garden equipment, and then there's another, I won't use their name in the presentation, but there's another high street shop that's very popular. And if you go to that store, you'll be targeted with garden equipment. Now, that's the kind of thing that really makes people nervous, and that's the type of information that I think this legislation was intended to resolve. Unfortunately, the way it was written, it was badly written for that case, and I think it's now taken a huge umbrella approach and just said all cookies are bad, whether they're first party, third party, anything, and they shouldn't be used, and you have to warn everyone. Another sort of emotive word that came out again today from Fidelma. Sorry, I have to pick on you. And I think it's probably in the legislation as well, is the word intrusive. Again, it's the intrusive, it's the tracking across websites that I think most people have a problem with. It's not the measurement within your own website. So if you go to a website, web analytics is all about just seeing how many different how many different browsers came to a site, what pages they looked at, what they did you sell any products, any of that sort of information. If you send an email, does that email then drive traffic back to your site? It's not such an intrusive activity. And I think as a web analytics company and industry, we need to move away from saying tracking because we're just as bad as anyone else. But what we do is not track visitors, we actually just measure traffic. And I think it's important. And again, when you're writing policy and you're writing documents on your own website, you might do well to distinguish the difference between measuring activity and tracking people. I think just a slight change in the word so it's not so emotive, you just reframe it a little bit, might make it a little bit more palatable for people to accept. One of the things that AT Internet has tried to participate in is Matthew Lawrence, our CEO from AT Internet, was one of the people that was invited along to the EG8 summit that happened earlier this month, or earlier in May. You can see there's a lot of very high-profile names that were there. And I was actually in Bordeaux last week, and I had a chance to talk to Matthew once he came back from the forum, and he said that this was a hot topic of discussion. And I think that you can't, when you've got people like Zuckerberg and Eric Schmidt and Rupert Murdoch and that level of involvement in the industry, talking to the leaders and having access, they've got Sarkozy there. There was a lot of other EU leaders there. I think when those guys start putting a lot of pressure on the EU, we might find that in over the next 12 months there may be some slight revisions or some modifications to it to clarify a little bit what you can and can't do, and we might find that things like web analytics and measurement cookies might be allowed more than the third-party tracking cookies. Again, I don't have any basis for that other than I think that it's completely unworkable as it's written. I think from a comparing to what we have at the moment. And I think that, what will happen, or at least I can see what will happen, is a lot of the larger companies will just ship off and they'll put all their servers in the States instead of have them over here, and they'll register the companies there, and then they'll be able to do whatever they like. So there's going to be, something's got to happen. I think everybody said it so far today, but I think the biggest thing right now is just not to panic. How many people have actually started the audit process or have actually started making plans to actually do something on the site? Okay, good. So about half, I would say. Has anybody implemented anything at the moment yet, or are you still investigating what you want to do? Any implementation? 1, 2. Okay, so we've got 2 out of the group that have actually implemented something, so that's good. I think it's good to start the discussion. I did make some notes while we were going through. I think one of the things that may help in the short term is if you move from third-party for all your measurement and your internal cookies. If you use third-party cookies at the moment, switch to first-party cookies. That will be the first step to show that you're actually trying to do something. I think a lot of companies have problems with the third-party cookie issue, where other companies are serving some sort of a measurement cookie or some sort of a tracking cookie on the site. I know all of the web analytics, I've worked for 3 of them, but I know all of the web analytics companies at the moment can use third-party cookies for web analytics and not third-party. First-party, not third-party. So all you need to do is just make a change. Call up your web analytics company, doesn't matter who it is. I don't think Google does it, but all of the main paid players. Just call them up, tell them that you want to switch to first-party cookies instead. They can put something in place. It's a minor change on the website. It's a little bit of pain, but again, it's showing if anybody does come to question later, you can say we've moved off a third-party onto first-party, so it's a little bit more secure, and it again will help your customers and people that come to the site feel a bit more comfortable about working with you. The second thing was to start developing a concrete plan. It's good to see about half of you started that process already. Again, we've got 12 months to go. I think as long as, even if the 12 months comes up, as long as you show that you've seriously been considering what you need to do, you've actually got planning in place, even if you don't have the resources or the time to redo everything in the short term, I think if a question ever came up, then you could at least make a good solid argument that you were making the effort and that you were heading in the right direction. The last one is, I think the other thing is to really seriously consider, again, intranet is one of the things that you need to not forget. If you do have intranet sites, that was a very good point by Fidelma. The other thing is it's the third-party ad serving. So if you've got ad serving on your site that's being, in an iframe or something like that, that's being delivered by a third-party company, who actually needs to get consent for that? Do you need to get consent for that, or does that company need to get consent for that? Is another question that I'm not entirely sure about, that's very clear at the moment. So that might be something to consider as well. The last thing I wanted to say is that I'm not a lawyer, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But I think it's again, it's just general advice. Move to first-party cookies. I wouldn't worry so much about it, even as Simon said, the web analytics and the internal type cookies that are just doing things on your website in particular are not so much of a worry. It's more of the sort of the real tracking cookies that are looking at people across websites. And that was it for me. I'll keep it short and sweet.